Good evening. Today is Tuesday, September 25th. This is the opening of the Board of Selectmen Meeting. This meeting is being televised by Whitman Hanson Cable Access. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Good evening, Hanson. Here are this week's announcements. National Grid will be conducting vegetation and hazard mitigation management along Elm, Main, and High Streets beginning this week. All affected property owners have been notified by National Grid. Lewis Tree Service has been contracted to do the work. Dollars for Scholars will be hosting 2 fundraising events: Electronic Recycling Day on Saturday, September 29th at 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at McQuan Elementary School, and Skate Party on September 30th, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Carousel Family Fun Center in Whitman. For more information, call Mike at 781-252-9683 or visit Hanson and Whitman Hanson dollarsforscholars.org. Town Clerk's Office would like to remind dog owners to license their dogs by September 30th to avoid a $25 late fee. October's special town meeting will be held on Monday, October 1st at Hanson Middle School. The meeting will be starting at 7:30 p.m. and a quorum of 100 registered voters will be required to conduct town business. The dedication to the Honorable Charles W. Mann Bridge will be held on Friday, October 12th at 10 a.m. at the Winter Street Bridge, which spans the Indian Head River. A collation will be held in the Selectmen's office, in the Selectmen Meeting Room, following the dedication. Hanson Boy Scout Troop 68 will hold its annual pumpkin sale at the Town Hall Green on Friday, October 19th from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., Saturday and Sunday, October 20th and 21st from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. The troop will also hold a flag retirement ceremony on Monday, November 5th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. on the Town Green. Volunteers are needed for the Camp Kewanee Halloween Extravaganza, which will be held on Sunday, October 28th from noon to 4 p.m. If you'd like to volunteer, please download an application at officialcampkewanee.com or come by the camp during normal business hours. If you'd like to decorate a cabin decorating applications are also online at officialcampkewanee.com. Volunteers are needed on the following committees: the 200th anniversary, Capital Improvement, Cultural Council, Economic Development, Elder Affairs, Finance, Memorial Day Patriot Observance, Memorial Field Trustees, Recreation Commission, and a Zoning Board alternate. Application for our appointment and information on the committees is available at the town website, hanson-ma.gov. Vacancies on the following elected boards: Board of Health and 2 members on the Hanson Housing Authority. Applications for appointment and information on the committees are also available on the town website. Upcoming town meetings: Selectmen meeting will be held prior to the special town meeting on October 1st, 7:30 at 7 p.m., and then the town meeting will begin at 7:30 p.m. And then also on October 2nd, if business isn't finished on the first night of meeting, we'll be meeting on October 2nd at 7 p.m. at the Hanson Middle School for the Selectmen's meeting. Following will be the special town meeting at 7:30 p.m. And then the Selectmen will be meeting on October 16th, 7 p.m. here at the Selectmen Meeting Room, and October 30th at 7 p.m.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, and the new business, retail marijuana forum. So the board wanted to have, once we voted to put this item on the warrant, we wanted to have a question and answer session prior to town meeting, just to, if anybody had any questions, regarding this. We'd have Kate come in, and Kate's our general counsel, and step right up, Kate. And she's very, very knowledgeable on this issue. And she's going to read briefly, and then we'll see if anybody from the board has any questions, and then I'll open it up to the audience if you have any questions. Sure. Take it away, Kate.
Thank you, and I'll keep the presentation really, really brief because essentially at the last town meeting you passed both a zoning bylaw which regulates marijuana establishments, but there was a feeling that perhaps the town wanted to consider prohibiting marijuana retailers, so those establishments that sell marijuana to customers directly, as opposed to the cultivators or product manufacturers or testing facilities. So as a consequence, we put together an amendment to the bylaw that was recently passed to prohibit marijuana retailers in the town. Now, we did it twofold, through a general bylaw and through a zoning bylaw. General bylaw will require a 50% majority, a simple majority at town meeting. The zoning bylaw will require a 2/3 majority at town meeting. Now, the other complicating factor is that because the town, when they voted the state question in 2016, voted in favor, this question has to be put on the ballot as well. So we've prepared 2 ballot questions, and the format of those ballot questions is dictated by the legislation. So we drafted those up. So to prohibit marijuana in the town of Hanson, you have to vote yes on the legislation. So it's a little bit counterintuitive because you're voting yes on approving the bylaw, which serves as a prohibition. So per Jim's suggestion, the questions were revised to have clearly written in bold. Yes means you're going to prohibit marijuana retailers, and no is going to be you're allowing marijuana retailers in the town. So the questions have been formatted that way, so it's a little more clear because it's a little bit counterintuitive. But that will be done at the town election, obviously. So, and if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to field them.
Do you guys have any questions, Sam?
No.
Mr. Young,
Yeah,
can you please state your name for the record?
yes, Bruce I. Young, 594 Indian Head Street, Hanson, Massachusetts, 02341.
Thank you.
Thanks. Let's assume you're at town meeting, okay? Well, let's assume that article is 22, 23, or 21 and 22?
21 and 22.
Let's assume Article 21 passes. There's 150 people there. 100 people vote for it, 50 people vote against it, passes. All right. And I noticed that both of those articles are contingent on the election vote that takes place in November. Now we get to the next article, and the next article gets a majority of 100 to 50, but obviously it didn't get to 2/3. Now, I'm assuming that unless the town meeting votes for both of those articles, it makes the election article vote absolutely moot. You have to vote for both of them. In other words, you get a majority vote, and then the other one gets a majority, but it goes down by 2/3. It kills any chance, absolutely any chance, of the other 7,000 people in town going to the polls and making the decision on whether they want to prohibit marijuana. Is that correct?
So you raise a really good question.
Is that yes or no?
It's not a yes or no answer, so I won't answer that way.
Okay.
And I'll tell you a long explanation.
Okay.
The reason why we put in both a general and a zoning bylaw is this. Under the legislation, it indicates what a town can and cannot do. And in that legislation, it makes a distinction between zoning bylaws, and then it just refers to bylaws, which is quite common in the general laws. There's no calling out of a general bylaw. It doesn't exist in the Massachusetts general laws. So as a consequence, we felt like a general bylaw could serve to prohibit marijuana retail, prohibit any type of marijuana in a town which elected to do so by a general bylaw measure. That said, we wanted to be very cautious and put in the zoning bylaw measure because there's a long list of cases that stand for the proposition that if it looks like a zoning bylaw but only went through the process of a general bylaw passage, namely it didn't have the public hearing before the planning board, it didn't have a 2/3 vote at town meeting, they struck those bylaws down because they looked like zoning bylaws. In the case that is on point, it has to do with, I think, the regulation of mobile homes or something like that. And so we wanted to be very cautious to have both, to say that the zoning bylaw is the guaranteed to prohibit the marijuana retailers in the town of Hanson. Now, that said, if it plays out the way you have described, so town meeting passes the prohibition in the general bylaw, but the zoning prohibition fails, it still goes to a vote, and you have two separate questions, and the electorate will vote however they want to vote, and say they both pass. The town has a couple of options. They could do another special town meeting and try to pass the zoning bylaw, because you need the two-prong approach. Or the town could take the position that it will rely on the general bylaw to prohibit. Now, there's risk of litigation, obviously, of a challenge. So you're in a little bit of a precarious position, but you haven't lost all. Hope is a bad word, but you haven't lost all the prospect of withstanding a challenge because of the way the legislation was drafted. So it's not super clear, Bruce, and we're not in a position, because a lot of these bylaws have not been challenged yet. Well, none of the bylaws have been challenged yet. We're not in a position to know whether or not the court is going to demand that it be a zoning versus a general bylaw. And that's the best answer I can give.
I think you made it clear. So you still get to the election ballot, even with the scenario that I just put forward.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The election, we have to put the ballot questions on the ballot because of timing, regardless. So it might be one of those weird situations. So if you do an override, for example, typically that passes at town meeting and fails at the election, right? But we had a client where the reverse happened, failed at town meeting, and then it passed at the election. So then they called the special town meeting to see if that town meeting would vote for it, and it ended up failing anyway, but regardless.
We want to end up with the same scenario that we have in the moratorium, because they presented the moratorium as a zoning bylaw, even though it got enough votes to pass at the town meeting. It didn't get enough for 2/3, so the moratorium failed.
Yeah, and the moratorium, for example, always has to be a zoning bylaw, just because it's regulating land use. It's saying you can't have a building permit or site plan approval or special permit approval
Right.
for a certain period of time. So that definitely has to be a zoning bylaw. Yep.
Any more questions?
No, that was good.
Go ahead, sir.
So,
Can you state your name, please?
yeah, Wayne Peterson, I just bought a house on Donna Drive. Cool. So I have a couple of questions that just for clarification. So the question on the state ballot passed in Hanson, correct?
That's correct.
So how is this not just trying to push an unpopular opinion through a election that have a smaller voter base?
It's just the process that's laid out in the legislation. The legislation contemplates towns that may have thought at that statewide election that they were going to, that they approved of the idea of recreational marijuana, right? And then when towns thought about it, they said, well, actually, I don't want it in my backyard. And so they've changed their mind, and it gives them,
That's the case.
well, that's what the
Because-
legislation
Right, but I'm
contemplates.
saying the state has already spoken, the voters have already spoken and passed it overwhelmingly. Hanson has already passed it. Now you're going to an election that will have much smaller turnout to get the reaction that you want, instead of actually doing a election that will have a large turnout that everyone will be voting on this issue.
So let's just be clear, it's not what I want or
I'm
what I
sorry,
don't
I'm
want.
using you as because you were the council.
Yeah, so it's what the residents of the town want, and they're the deciding vote. They decided they wanted recreational marijuana, and then the legislation was polished and changed, and the town may or may not decide to prohibit retail marijuana. It's within the purview of the electorate. You're right. And so, in terms of actual turnout, we're doing it at the next election, which happens to coincide. Yep, but it happens to coincide with.
Third of the turnout of a presidential election.
It's probably a better turnout, though, than you might have with a local election.
Well, absolutely, but still way smaller than the election that passed it.
Yeah.
Mr.
I mean,
Hayes?
you can gather the troops however you would like and try to, each side can rally their own voters. Yeah.
Mr. Hayes, go ahead.
Bob Hayes, Green Grove Lane, Hanson, 02341.
Thank you. What's the code in Hanson?
I think twice was, I almost said 5. Isn't it very similar to the prohibition of alcohol? Towns are allowed to, the state passed a law stating you can sell alcohol. Certain towns have passed laws saying, not here, dry town.
That's true.
It's very similar. It allows the electorate of the town to determine what they want in their town. Very similar to zoning bylaws were passed in the 60s in these small communities.
Mm-hmm.
It went on with, I forget what it was, a video store or something in Hanson where you have to provide a location, but you can't zone it in the Great Cedar Swamp. It has to be a viable place that could come to. So isn't this very similar in case law?
Yeah, so in terms of being required to zone for certain things, there's a whole adult entertainment set of case law. But remember, adult entertainment is a lot different because you have First Amendment protections because it's a freedom of expression. Whereas it doesn't have those same protections. It's not a constitutionally protected use. So that's why prohibition, a total out and out prohibition, is sanctioned by the law.
Any more questions? Okay,
John, 31 Indian Path, Hanson. I think the board is on record as being in favor of this.
No,
Oh, no, you haven't taken a
no,
vote?
we've taken a vote, but there's no unanimous vote on the board.
I thought there was
Yeah.
a consensus on the board, no?
No.
Okay. Then let me phrase it in general. The people who are proposing this, is it their expectation that prohibiting a sales facility in Hanson will decrease the use of recreational marijuana among Hanson residents, or they just don't want the revenue?
So I can't tell you what people's motivation is. I will tell you this. Personal consumption of marijuana remains state law. You can't tell people that they can't possess marijuana. You can't tell people that they can't consume marijuana. And in terms of retail sales, it will be available in other communities because I, for example, know of other communities that have allowed retail in the state. So
The state taxes that are collected go back to the communities that sell it, correct?
no, that was a proposal. It's not written that way anymore. Actually, the marijuana proponents wanted to propose or wanted that amendment to the legislation, and it didn't pass muster. But obviously, you couldn't have the local tax revenue because there's a 3% local tax on marijuana sales, but only to consumers. So your product manufacturers and your cultivators whom do wholesale sales, they're not captured in that 3% local tax.
sir, go ahead.
Patrick Powers, 255 Holmes Street. So this proposed amendment, or the amendments, I would say, is it simply for recreational sales? Is it also for the manufacturing proponent of it and the wholesale proponent of it?
It's just recreational retail sales. So your cultivators and manufacturers and testing facilities are still allowed in the town.
And it still allows, as you mentioned earlier, people can go purchase it elsewhere, bring it back to town if they want. They can still grow in their homes if they want based on the state legislation. So I'm just confirming for the folks that say, if we vote this way and approve the amendments, it'll keep it out of our town. It really won't. It'll just simply keep recreational sales out of our town.
Well, personal growing, and you're allowed a certain number of plants, and I can't recall off the top of my head, but a certain number of plants and a certain amount of marijuana to possess. So you're right.
The other question is there a cost associated with having this? Is it true that during the midterm election, this has to be the second ballot? They can't be on the same as the midterm elections. We have to have a second vote that day. Could that be confusing? And how are we planning to limit that confusion for residents? If we've already seen statistically lower turnouts at midterms, how are we preventing that?
So you're right. I mean, it has to be two separate ballots because the state ballot is wholly separate. This is considered a local election. It's on the same day, so you capture that same audience. But you have two separate ballots. You have to, I believe, sign in twice. So there is a potential for confusion. That's why you have to really educate your voters. And I'm hopeful that at town meeting, if anyone has any questions too, I'm there to answer those questions. The clerk is there with the questions. And at that point, I believe, Mary, will have the ballot questions published. Or maybe they already are published, are they?
They could be. I'll
Yeah.
have to check.
Yeah.
But she'll have them ready soon.
Yeah, they're going to be ready soon.
And this is confirmed again for the voters of Hanson, this doesn't make any changes to the fact that it's still illegal to operate a motor vehicle under the influence. It's illegal to drive with an open container. You have to have it locked in your trunk, in your glove box, in all those cases. There won't be people legally driving through town just smoking joints out the window if we do allow recreational marijuana.
Yeah, so you can't driving while impaired, whether it be alcohol or your prescription drugs or marijuana, is still illegal in the state of Massachusetts for sure.
I just want to confirm that, should this get struck down, it makes no changes to that, it's still legal. Which is a good thing.
Yeah, that's right. It's true.
Mr. Hickey?
I actually had a question for both the fire chief and the police chief. What kind of training, special training, would either the fire department or police department need, and what would the cost be to that if it passed?
If it doesn't pass.
If
Because if it passes.
it
then
doesn't
we- yeah.
pass?
No, other than just the inspectional portion for us would be probably a little bit different, but we can go to the state fire marshal's office. They have fire protection engineers, we've already had classes on it, but other than that, as far as patient care, we wouldn't change anything that we did.
Thank you.
Chief Mix?
For me, it's gonna depend upon what happens around us. One way or another, I have to start training people in a thing called A-Ride, which is, it's advanced roadside interdiction. It's to identify people who are impaired. We're gonna have to do this anyways. The state has just started rolling out some of the training recently for us. But, so cost-wise for me, to train everybody in the department every 8 hours cost me about $8,000. That particular training's a one-day training, but you may do it numerous times. In the legislation, or if you end up with a retail, there is a way for us to recap some of our costs. So it's the host.
Yep, the host community
Community.
agreement provides for impact payments to the town up to 3%.
And we have to show that we had the impact and that we spent the money for the impact. Now, some towns I know are requiring extra security, so I know Brockton and one of the medical facilities, they have detail offices 24/7 basically. But so I don't know the cost until I see the situation. With a retail, will I need a detail cop there all the time? I don't know, I don't need a detail cop at the package store, but the package store can go to the bank and deposit their funds. Right now, there's only one bank in Massachusetts that's gonna take funds from marijuana facilities. That's been the biggest concern, I shouldn't say the biggest, that's a very big concern for host communities as far as security goes, because basically you gotta make sure any of these places have more security than a bank, because they are a bank.
And that's a good point. It's a heavy cash business, but I was just advised that actually a second bank came into the mix, and I'm forgetting who it was.
I only know the one in Gardner.
Yeah, what is it?
There's a credit union.
I think it's a credit union in Gardner,
Yeah.
but I don't think there's I don't know of another one.
Yeah, there were two. There was an advisory that was just put out that a second bank joined the mix and set up, because you have to essentially make sure that you're not having the money cross the border. So, but yeah.
Ma'am? Her first, okay, then I'll go to you. Yes.
Peg Kitchenum, 75 Fairwood Drive in Hanson. You mentioned retail, but what's the status medical marijuana facilities, if this is voted down, are they permitted or not permitted?
So a medical marijuana facility is allowable under your bylaws. Now, the medical marijuana facility, they're what's called vertically integrated. So one entity has to do all components, cultivation, all the way up through retail sales. That said, typically medical facilities separate those operations. So you might have a dispensary in one town operating, but then they have a cultivation facility in another town. They're required to get a host community agreement, which the town can execute, and you can specify the terms therein. So I've seen host community agreements where they specify that you can be, your operation is approved for cultivation. So, but it's a little bit of a different animal because of the medical component. But this legislation doesn't address medical marijuana.
Sure.
Paul Bidinato, 72 Brookside Drive. I just want to piggyback on what the chief of police said. As of right now, the marijuana retail businesses, they cannot get merchant accounts. So it is going to be straight cash.
Does anybody else have any more questions?
Does anybody on the Board of Selectmen or maybe the town accountant or somebody have a handle on what the town would lose out financially? Let's say we end up with one marijuana shop in Hanson, as far as the revenue generated and the possible revenue generated by the 3% sales tax the town would lose?
I don't believe anybody can make that prediction, Mr. Young.
Because, I mean, you're talking about $30,000 for every $1 million, correct? Based on 3% sales tax? Is that what the Board of Selectmen voted?
The 3%, yes.
3%, yep.
So nobody has any kind of estimate?
I don't think there's a way to
No.
predict that since this is new and, and no community has been selling it yet. There's clearly pent up demand. In fact, the CCC is predicting that for the early adopters, the facilities that first adopt, they're going to have lines that are outrageous. In fact, a lot of the retail marijuana shops that are proposed to open in like Wareham and Bridgewater and some of the other ones that are kind of like pending but about to be released, they're planning on having entertainment and things to keep people busy while they're waiting to get, in line to get their retail marijuana. So, we can't predict what those sales will be, but.
Yeah, I asked that only because I've seen possible state-generated revenue predicated if the law passed, so I wondered how far down they broke that.
I mean, I think a lot of it's gonna depend on location, on what they sell, on what the competition, I mean, there's so many factors, that it could be virtually impossible and probably irresponsible to state what we would be getting.
Sure, good.
I mean, couldn't you just look at states that have approved it and have towns of relative size?
We actually have had people do that, specifically with Colorado. There's a gentleman that I know that has looked into Colorado and what the sales were, and I don't want to misspeak, but anecdotally, it was a lot larger than $30,000. It was in the million, and it was a town the same size as Hanson, roughly the same demographics as Hanson. In fact, I'd say they had 2 recreational marijuana shops, and when they were contacted by this person, the mayor of the town said, let me put it this way, we have not had to ask for any funding overrides for schools, for fire, or for police since we allowed recreational marijuana in our town. So
Sounds great.
I'm not opining, I'm just saying this is what was reported to me, and I haven't independently verified it, but.
Sir?
Two additional questions. One, so if this does pass and we restrict recreational, just to confirm, we'll likely have to see an expense anyways for police or fire training because of the town surroundings and the fact that it's legal in the state. The second part, if it gets struck down and we allow recreational sales, the townspeople, although they've had a chance to vote on it in the past, will still have additional say because we have to have that host community agreement agreed upon. So there's still additional checks and balances, even if this goes, recreational sales go forward. It's not like somebody can just set up next to the school, and set up next to a church, and set up next to a daycare facility.
No, we get to manage some of that process, but Kate, I want to piggyback a bit on what Chief Mix said.
Yep.
Which, because I think it's important for people that are thinking we're just going to have to bear whatever costs happen and we can't manage this process or whatever. What I think I heard you say was that if we're able to demonstrate additional costs, for whatever those costs may be, police, fire, additional training, some kind of tax accounting infrastructure, whatever the town is going to be required to put out of pocket that we wouldn't ordinarily in our ordinary course of business, we've got an opportunity to embed that into the community host agreement and say, look, we don't want to be losing money as a result of you deciding to locate in Hanson. And in fact, if you're going to locate here, we actually want you to enhance our quality of life by doing the following things. And we've got that ability to do that.
Right. So to be clear, there are two sources of revenue from marijuana. The retail, which is the local tax, but it's only on retailers. The host community agreements apply to every type of marijuana establishment, so your cultivators, manufacturers, and testing facilities. And the max cap on those community impact fees that Laura is referencing is also 3%. So with your other more industrial uses, you can get the 3% if they agree to that fee in your host community agreement. And on the retail side, you get the 3% in the host community impact fees, as well as an additional 3% on local sales tax. So you're absolutely right. For any facility that's being cited in the town has to come through the Board of Selectmen, get that host community agreement, and the impact payments are embedded in there. Yeah.
Okay, one more question.
Last question. So out of the 23 or 24 amendments that are on there, other than potentially banning recreational, what other amendments are for income opportunities for the town versus spending opportunities?
I don't believe there are vacancies.
So no other income opportunities, this is potentially an opportunity.
Well,
On this warrant?
that's not absolute. No, that's
Cell
not
phone
true.
tower
We've
maybe.
got economic development committee, and we've got a TIF that we won't have on this town warrant because we just decided the timing was a little too close. But developing the economic development area is a prelude to us doing the TIF, and then hopefully having an incentive
So
to.
one, maybe two others, fair enough.
Yeah.
In addition to that, we do have a question that is going to come before town meeting to allow the Board of Selectmen, as I think you alluded to enter into an agreement to lease out a piece of property at the middle school for the construction of a communications tower. I was going to get into this later when we go through the warrant, however, I can get into it right now. I have made a determination for a recommendation of to whom to award that particular that contract. And in summation, if all of the options are agreed to in the end, it's a 10-year lease with 3 5-year amendments. The potential revenue just on the lease itself is $800,000. This particular proposal also includes a 25-cent payback to the town for each of the subleases, meaning each of the separate units from the carriers that, which, based on an average of about $30,000 rent per unit, the town of Hanson would see $7,500 apiece each year. My understanding is that there is a very good potential for at least 3 such units placed on this particular tower, so that'd be an additional $25,000 a year to the town of Hanson. So we're looking at, in the first year, approximately $50,000. And then, of course, as we go through.
25, 30,000 add up.
Yeah, so actually, if a single unit alone after a potential 25-year lease would be another $187,000 on top of the $800,000 for the lease itself. And again, if we're talking about the potential of 3 units at a minimum being put on that tower, we're talking approximately another $600,000. So yeah, we've got one article on there that potentially is going to
aside from the fact it's gonna improve the cell signal here in town for safety and convenience purposes, so.
All right, excellent. Kate, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have town meeting preview. So we want to go through these articles, just read the articles. You don't have to read the explanation.
Just read the motion.
I don't want to debate articles here tonight. We can save that for town meeting.
Do we have dollar amounts for ones that we have not,
We will have to make some recommendations, and, actually, we have all the dollar amounts in now. But we have a few articles that we need to make recommendations on.
you, Sean?
Article 1.
All right.
Who's got Article 1?
I got Article 1. I move to the town to transfer $12,165 from free cash to pay unpaid bills from fiscal year 2018.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Article 2.
I move the town vote to raise and appropriate $70,600 to supplement appropriations previously voted at the annual town meeting of May 2018 for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2018, for various town departments as printed in the warrant.
Okay, thanks, John. Article 3. Chief Thompson?
I move the town vote to transfer $325,000 from the annual receipt return account to purchase and equip new units, as well as the power stretcher and patient loading system.
Article 4, Chief?
I move the town vote to transfer $25,000 from free cash to purchase ballistic protection for all full-time members.
Article 5, Mr. McHugh? Water Commissioners?
Yes, there's nobody from Water present this evening, so I will read this, but somebody from that particular, from the board will read it at town meeting. I move the town appropriate $1,300,000 to pay the cost of purchasing and installing water meters, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the selectmen, is authorized to borrow the amount under and pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 8, subsection 6, or any other enabling authority to issue the bonds or notes of the town therefore. Any premium received upon the sale of the bonds or notes approved by this vote, less such premium applied to the payment of the cost of issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of the costs approved by this vote in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 20, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount.
Article 5 requires a 2/3 vote. Article 6, Mike?
I move the town vote to transfer $500,000 from the water surplus to be added to the funds appropriated under Article 23 of the May 4th, 2015 annual town meeting for additional water exploration.
Thank you. Article 7, Board of Assessors.
Rita Marsh, Kathy Marine will be presenting the article at town meeting. I move that the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $10,000 to fund the FY 2018 through 2020 interim year adjustments and the commercial, industrial, personal property cyclical recertification of the town's real estate and personal property values as required by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 218, the Acts of 2016.
Okay, thank you. Article 8, Building Department. Mike, do you have that?
Yeah, I can do this one as well. I move the town vote to transfer from free cash the amount of $3,500 to add zoning and conservation layers to People GIS in order to create and print new zoning map books.
Okay. Article 9, Laura?
I move the town vote to, I didn't get the motion on this, Mary, so should I?
Oh, you
I
didn't,
don't-
okay,
I know I don't
we
want
can,
to
we
say
can
it.
run through it.
Okay.
Mike can.
Yeah, I'll read it. I move the town vote to transfer $50,000 from free cash to the 200th anniversary committee account.
Okay, thank you. Article 10, I move the town will vote to transfer $35,000 from free cash to fund the needs analysis of the Hanson Senior Center, both operations and facilities.
What's the dollar amount on that, Mike?
35,000. Article 11.
I move the town vote to transfer $47,600 from free cash to secure and weatherize the building and grounds of the former McQuon School, both internally and externally, and to fund the analysis of hazardous materials within the building.
Article 12, Mr. Hayes.
I move the town vote to transfer some of the money from the amounts appropriated at the May 2016 annual town meeting, Article 12, Item 3, lift for high school bleachers, and from the amounts appropriated for the October 2016 special town meeting, Article 18, McQuon repairs, and or available funds to construct a handicap ramp to the existing press box at the high school.
I'm sorry, can we back up? Am I allowed to ask the FinCom why they voted against weatherizing McQuan? Because it's a
Sure.
4-0?
Because there was no dollar amount provided to us.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, we didn't have the we
No
just.
dollars,
Yeah, that was a late break. You didn't want an open-ended checkbook on that one?
that's right.
All right. Are you guys meeting again before town meeting,
We're
or?
not,
Okay,
but I will be happy to answer that question at town meeting.
great.
And Bob, the amount for your article is $28,126.
Can we get into that?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I'm okay.
Article 13, community preservations, Mike.
Sure. I move the town vote to appropriate $30,000 from the Open Space Reserve Fund to be used for the development of engineering plans for the park at the former Plymouth County Hospital site.
Thank you. Article 14.
That's a Passover.
This is going to be a Passover.
Okay. Article 15, Mr. Sullivan.
I move the town vote to transfer from free cash $50,000 to be added to stabilization.
Excellent, thank you. Article 16.
Mr. Bloss, I move the town vote to transfer from free cash $25,000 to be added to the regional schools capital stabilization fund as established by the October 2014 special town meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Bloss. Article 17.
I move the town to vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to lease a portion of the Hanson Middle School property at 111 Liberty Street, Hanson, Massachusetts, which parcel is shown on the Assessor's Plan 91 as Lot 26, described in the deed recorded in the Plymouth Registry of Deeds in Book 4023, page 740, in which portion is depicted on the plan as entitled Plan of Land in Hanson, Lot A, 83.34 acres, prepared by Lamont R. Healy, Inc., Plan number 77-770, recorded October 17, 1977, as printed in the warrant.
Thanks, Matt. Article 18, Mr. Hayes.
I move the town of Hanson will approve the amended Whitman Hanson Regional School District Regional Agreement dated June 6, 2018, a copy of which is on file in the town clerk's office.
Excellent, thank you. Article 19.
I move the town vote to amend the Town of Hanson General Article 2-12, Classification and Comprehension, Section 11A, Professionals' Positions by amending the range for item E, Health Agent, to 40,000 to 70,000.
Okay, Article 20.
I move the town vote to declare a parcel of land designated on Assessor's Map 99, Lot 12-2, and listed as 0 Liberty Street as surplus, and to further to authorize the Board of Selectmen to dispose of said parcel in accordance with MGL Chapter 30B.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, just to address this gentleman's question, that's another potential revenue article.
Okay, thank you. Article 21.
Oh, boy, here we go. I move the town vote expressly contingent on an affirmative vote by the town residents at the local town election on November 6, 2018, to amend the Town of Hanson general bylaws by amending Part 3 articles relating to the general public by adding a new Article 3-24, marijuana retailers, to prohibit marijuana retailers in the town of Hanson as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, David.
And I think it's particularly important in this one to read the explanation, not tonight, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. Article 22, I move the town vote to amend the town of Hanson zoning bylaws expressly contingent on the affirmative vote by the town residents at the local town election on November 6, 2018 by amending section 6 subsection M, marijuana establishments, as to prohibit marijuana retailers in all districts or take any other action relative thereto, by making the following changes thereto, by deleting the text shown with a, and inserting the text shown in italics as printed on the warrant. Article 23.
I move the town vote to designate the following parcels as comprising an economic opportunity area, EOA, for a 10-year period, and submit same to the Economic Assistance Coordinating Council, EACC. Parcel 42-0-11-0, 1011-1057 Main Street. Parcel 42-0-17-0, 1054 Main Street. Parcel 42-0-60A-0, 1011-Rear Main Street. Parcel 42-0-66-0, 0 ADJ, New York, New Hampshire, Hartford Railroad. Parcel 43-0-29-0, 1071 Main Street.
Wow.
Can you go back? You missed a zero. Read it again.
That was a lot.
Now, Kate, can I tighten that motion up to like go back a few lines and say as printed in the warrant?
Yeah.
I can fix that for you, Wes.
Great idea.
How about
Nobody could have done that any better.
All right, so Mary will make that note on Article 23. Thank you, Mr. Bloss. Article 24.
I move the town vote to pass over Article 24.
That's end of town meeting preview.
So the selectmen have a few articles which we need a recommendation on. If you want to go to the spreadsheets, that might be easier.
Okay, starting with Article 2.
Yes.
I'm looking for a motion to place Article 2.
Nope, recommend.
I'm sorry, recommend. That's what I meant.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor? 5-0?
Article 11.
Okay. Okay, next,
I move that we recommend Article 11.
is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor? 5-0, Mary.
Article 17, the cell tower.
I move that we vote to recommend the cell. Where's the, oh, you just had to finalize the,
Yeah, he read off the information. That's what we were waiting for.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions on Article 17? Cell tower. All those in favor? 5-0.
Okay, I think we're
That's it.
good.
We'll pass it over
Thank
on
you very much.
24. Thank you to everybody that contributed.
wait, didn't we, did we have the 35,000 for this, for the senior center before?
Yes.
We already had that, yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
okay,
we did.
just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, so am
Somebody miss a couple of votes.
No.
As they come in and make the best sense to you.
Or regardless.
So you can ask for that.
If you go on tomorrow, I may just do them myself, but.
Yeah, There were like 2 things we voted on when you were on.
All right,
I
next.
don't remember what they were.
I'm struggling with that.
Just in case.
Next, under
Thank
new
you.
business, on item 3, discussion, MGL, we had some questions on that, but our questions have been answered, so we're gonna move on to the next thing, distribute energy reduction plan for future considerations and vote. That's item 4 on your iPads.
And then also too, if you don't have what we're looking at, they're available right up here on the front desk.
That's
Thank you.
great point, man. Anybody that wants to grab one.
There's only 3, but it's a start.
Did you Vanna White it? Oh, you,
Yeah.
you said the same thing I did, the Vanna White.
Oh, you,
You said
You
it
wanna
just as I
speak
did.
on this?
Just briefly, this is really just to inform the Board of Selectmen and to distribute to the Board of Selectmen this proposed energy reduction plan. It's my understanding that the Energy Committee will be meeting with them.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, oh, is it as soon as tomorrow? To finalize and to move this forward. So this is really more to distribute to the Board of Selectmen for the potential action at our next meeting.
This is gonna need a vote, correct?
Not this evening.
Okay.
I want to make sure the board, takes a look at it, and then, of course, the Energy Committee comes back with its recommendation, and we'll invite them to come to the next board meeting, and a conversation can ensue at that point, and a potential vote can happen then.
Okay, excellent. So next, request, the Holiday Committee requests to use the Town Hall Green on Saturday, December 8th for the annual tree lighting from 5 PM to 7 PM.
So moved.
you didn't say.
That's probably, I think this is gotta be the 5th or 6th one. That's always a good event.
Yes.
It's the 6th one? Okay. All those in favor?
Do I have a second? Who was the second?
I was.
Okay.
Sorry, Mary.
That's right.
5-0 with Mr. Hickey seconded it.
The nice tree that we saved.
Okay, thanks to the Holiday Committee. Next request, Hanson Little League, the 8th annual Damon's Freaky 5K Road Race on Saturday, October 27th, starting at 10 a.m. at Damien's Pub, 279 Spring Street. Looking for
Can I
a
just make a
motion?
comment that is gonna be one heck of a weekend? Okay, we've got the Freaky 5K road race, we've got the Panther Education Truck or Treat, that's both on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we've got the Camp Quaney Extravaganza held.
Excellent. Tracy, are you taking notes?
She's all over it.
Okay.
She already
I'll
knows.
second that.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey. Motion's been made and seconded. Any
Mr.
questions? Yes, sir.
And the police chief is all set, and he's happy with the last year's, results of. the past 5 years.
Chief Mix,
Chief Mix, excuse me.
the Freaky
the-
5K road
The
race.
Damiens, you have no issues with the road races that have been going on over there? This is the 8th year?
They come and see us, we
Yeah.
take care of it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any more questions? All those in favor? 5-0. Okay, town administrators report. Mr. McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is going to be extremely brief. I wanted to report back to the board that I had been told that Monday evening, East Bridgewater signed off on the intermunicipal agreement for the IT director. And what we propose to do is have members of the East Bridgewater Board of Selectmen, along with the town administrator, join us at our next regularly scheduled meeting, as well as the new IT director, to introduce him and to basically, go over with both boards how we're gonna move forward on that. So, as far as all the official legal documents and votes and signatures, everything is done. So we move forward with what I expect to be a really good collaboration between the two towns. I reached out today to Columbia Gas, and I've asked them to provide a representative to come to our next selectmen's meeting to address any concerns the Board of Selectmen has, and to update us in terms of what they're doing with the new facility they're building here in town. I felt that, and they've been very cooperative to the degree that they can be. They're obviously up to their necks in what unfortunately happened to the north of us. However, I continue to receive questions and concerns about the facility and just the gas lines in general in the town of Hanson. And given the fact that that project is going forward, and it's quite, to lack for a better word, overt, it's fairly significant when you drive by and look at it. I thought it really warranted somebody coming in, so the board and anyone from the public watching could hopefully glean a sense of security, a sense that things hopefully are being done right. I expect that, very well expect that they are. However, again, I want to make sure that the town receives any assurances, that the board receives any assurances it feels it needs. So I'm trying to set that up again for our next meeting, which I believe is on the 16th of October.
Well, I know, Mike, I've reached out to you a number of times on
Yes.
this, because I've had people
Yes.
concerned, and I'm concerned myself. And I think that there's, yes, Columbia Gas is an issue, but now they're finding that there were insufficient gas inspectors at the state level, and they're questioning that. And then also I had somebody point out that it's likely the same contractor
It
that's
is.
being used here that was used in Lawrence, so we've got that additional
Yes.
concern.
You're correct, and that was an additional wrinkle that
Yeah.
I think you and I discussed after the last selectmen's meeting. We became aware of the fact it was the same contractor. So again, the questions and the concerns appreciably increase, and again, I think it warrants somebody coming in and answering questions that the board may have.
I
And,
think the main thing that we're gonna wanna hear from them is how are they going to mitigate whatever risk there is and make sure that we don't have a repeat here in
yes,
Hanson?
very much so,
That's what I wanna know.
very much so.
I don't want somebody just coming and placating us and giving us the, song and dance or whatever. I really would like to know, like, what are they doing to vet, are they investigating that contractor? Are they vetting? Are they thinking about getting different contractors? I'd rather that they mothball the project for a while, if they don't have the right resources to do it properly, than to just keep chugging along.
And in all honesty, Laura, they very well may not have the right resources at this point. I don't want to speak out of turn for, that organization, but anecdotally, I know that they've, and for, appropriate reasons, they've focused all their efforts up in the Merrimack Valley area. So it's a legitimate concern, and it's a legitimate question in terms of putting things on ice until the situation north of Boston is taken care of.
Mike, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
just on
yeah,
that, you said
yeah.
October 16th?
Yeah, I believe it's the 16th.
Yes, that's the next meeting.
Yeah.
They did.
That someone will come. I reached out to the gentleman that came originally, and, explained what was going on up there, what the project was going to be, as well as a few other questions that the board had. And as I just said, a lot of their attention, most of their attention is focused up in the Andover area. And this particular gentleman will not be available, but he's going to make somebody else available. Laura sort of, I think, touched upon this. I wanted to make the board aware and the public aware that we will be passing over the article in which we requested, or we were going to request from town meeting, a tax incentive financing for a project on Main Street. The TIF committee met last Wednesday, both with a representative from the state, who gave us some more insight as to what the current state of the law is, of what the project is. And we also met with the proponents of the particular TIF, and we all came to a consensus that this is the first such attempt in the town of Hanson to pass such, that we want to make sure that we're very thorough in going forward, so that the town has a very comfortable feeling when it comes to voting on this particular TIF. And we've came to the conclusion that it made more sense to do it in spring. It actually does not, it doesn't really lose any value for the proponent. Whether we had done it next week or we do it in the spring, the TIF only takes place or takes effect in the coming fiscal year. So the benefits will only be reaped, might be the wrong word, will only be realized beginning July the 1st. So since we had the extra time that we weren't going to really put the proponent in an awkward situation, we made the decision jointly to go a bit slower and present it in the spring.
And Mike, can I just chime in a little bit on that? This is not to say that we are not still extremely bullish about pursuing this. And but as you said, we don't have the infrastructure in place. We don't have the checklist of things that we want to get out of this. There's a lot of early learnings that we really want to make sure that we get this right. The first one right, because if this proves to be as beneficial as we think it will be in improving Main Street, we're hoping that this will be the first of several tips that we might entertain there to get that area cleaned up.
And I think to your point, I think it actually shows that we are extremely bullish because we're taking a step back to make especially sure that this is successful as opposed to maybe going about it a little too quickly. We want this to succeed. We want it done right. And I think this shows even more of a commitment that the town will put extra time, that the committee will put extra time in making sure that this is successful. As I said, not an awful lot to report on. The only other thing that I'll say in passing is, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, and I've confirmed it both with the chairman of the FinCom and with the town moderator, that on Thursday we will be taping back-to-back shows at the cable station in terms of the town moderator, to explain what the town moderator position is and to give kind of a brief overview of how town meeting operates. We won't get into the questions or anything like that, but it's just a general overview of how to make a motion, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, just the ins and outs of town meeting. And hopefully that sort of a conversation will make people a little more comfortable. If they're uncomfortable coming to town meeting, we might get better turnout. And as far as the meeting with Kevin, we're going to talk about the role of FinCom, both at a town meeting and throughout the entire year. So again, people get a better understanding what the function is of that committee. And the hope additionally is that this may encourage somebody to step forward and fill an empty position. Not only, and the intent is for us to go on and have similar shows with different departments and different committees going forward, but to give a person that may be on the fence and has some sort of an interest perhaps in volunteering to be on a committee, a better understanding from basically the horse's mouth of what that committee does, and hopefully we'll get some more people to step forward. I think it falls in line with a couple of the board's objectives, one of which is just general outreach, but the second of which is potential recruitment of new volunteers. So
I love it, and I think that's fantastic, and it is moving the ball forward on some of our goals. Wondering if we can inquire with cable. I don't know exactly what the shelf life is for a lot of these videos, but it seems to me as though if we were able to, with their permission, put a link to these things that you're doing, to these particular sections, it would be helpful for citizens, put it in our little citizens library. But I know that sometimes these YouTube videos expire. I really don't know what the length of time is. They seem to vary, but I'm wondering if we somehow could ask them to lengthen that amount of time or give us the hard copy, or if we can work with them on that.
well, we can work with them on that. And Carol, who was hiding behind there, and she just waved at us, is actually doing all the production on this, and she and I can have that conversation on Thursday. But I think also tying in with the fact that we will have a new IT director finally within the next month, it can be something that that particular individual can help us out with if we have to host it here on a platform in the town. So I think that's a great idea, and I actually hadn't thought of that.
Okay, great.
And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
How did, sorry, Mr. Connecticut, go for it. Okay, how did Bob Curran make up with the owners of JJ regarding cleaning up that mess?
We're going to put together a hearing. We have not heard back yet. And I think that as you indicated, as the board indicated at the last meeting, we were going to give them a certain amount of time.
2 weeks, we were
Yeah,
gonna do.
and
Which would be next Tuesday.
which was, yes,
I
but
don't know how much time you need.
well, we're gonna go forward, I believe, on the 16th. We're gonna go at the soonest possible opportunity and have that hearing, because the last I had spoken with Mr. Curran, he hadn't heard anything back yet, so
Okay.
we'll line it up for that hearing, for that date, and if hopefully maybe something breaks in the meantime, we won't have to have the hearing, but we'll have it lined up just in case, so.
Okay, Jim.
But in.
Hold on one sec, Laura.
Okay.
Jim's got a question.
Mike, any word on a date for the auction?
Yeah,
Is that
it's the 26th. It's the 26th of October.
October.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead, Laura.
Back to the JJ's point, do we have funds available to clean that up? And then we would go back to town meeting to get reimbursed? I know we'll ultimately, if we pursue this, would put a lien against the property to recoup.
No, we do not have funds, and
Okay.
my approach to that would be to speak with the FinCom to get a transfer from the reserve fund. The numbers that I have been told that had been quoted for actually the owner from a company to clean it up, it's not a very expensive amount of money. I want to say it's between $3,000 and $4,000. So,
Oh.
but we would set a lien.
No,
I think it was-
think it's more than that.
Yeah.
I
No, I
believe it's
thought it
under
was-
50. I thought it was like.
No,
It's like
I-
$5,000 to do a house, that's a
Yeah.
commercial building,
It
so
was
it's
like-
probably close to the 8 or 10.
I had heard a much lower number than that, but I'll double check. But the number that I
Well,
heard
Karen
was
told me 14.
Okay.
14.
Yeah, but he thought it would be lower than that,
People
but
feel
he didn't
very
say anything
passionate
that
about
one.
what I'm talking about. Okay, so, but anyway, you'll get the number, you'll
Yeah.
work with FinCom, we'll find the funding, because it's critical, and we are all getting calls about it,
Well-
and I cringe every time I drive
Well,
by.
aside from aesthetics, as we all agree, it's a safety issue as well. It's an attractive nuisance. Granted, I've had a conversation with Kate and Jay in terms of we're not necessarily legally exposed should something happen on that property, but I think that the town of Hanson really has an obligation to try to
You
secure
get
the
with the board's
particular site.
Yep.
So, yes.
Okay, next, resignations. Resignation of Marissa Ikabachi from the Historical Commission.
I move to accept her resignation with regret.
So moved.
Motion is made and seconded. Any questions?
Second. Yes.
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 All in favor? 5-0. Okay, did everybody review the minutes for September 18th?
Yep, I move that we,
No, well, we have some changes and it's on your iPad,
oh,
and I didn't.
Any changes, man? I read through them.
There were a couple of things that Mr. Bloss pointed out, so I have I'm not even sure it's in our packets.
Oh, well, I
just
think you
grabbed
gave
it.
us one too.
Well, they were just grammatical, right?
No, I fixed them,
Yeah,
I
that's
fixed them completely.
yeah,
So
Okay.
that's why we're not seeing them on here?
No, because it should be on your iPads under, I think it's, what item is this, 8A? Is there an 8A on your iPad?
there is an 8A, but I don't think it's that.
There is an 8A minutes, yes.
Oh, there, okay, it's just the paragraphs that you corrected.
Yeah, so when I went to, Mr. Bloss pointed out the errors in the paragraphs, page 2, 6th paragraph down, page 2, the last line, and page 3, the 6th paragraph.
Okay.
And I've included the new verbiage with respect to the
Mr.
first
Bloss
one.
correcting the minutes, I like that.
So did I really appreciated
It looks
it.
good. There was a little bit of funkiness in there.
Yeah.
I move that we
Read what we've changed, though, when you move it, okay?
to approve the minutes, to
With
have
changes?
corrected.
Yeah, as amended, but we should at least say what the
Okay.
amendments were, so.
To page 2, 6th paragraph down, to show discussion regarding the discretion of the board. Ms. Petty is concerned about the appearance of favoritism if the town has authority to be
No, just get
lenient
funky.
with some of the requirements. Page 2, last line, Matt Dyer reviewed the general bylaws, Article 2-17, Section 5E, relative to the private ways, which states, quote, "No betterment charges shall be assessed," end quote. Page 3, 6th paragraph, Mr. Fitzgerald requested the board make a decision on the intersection option this evening in order to keep the project moving to final design.
Second? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Any more questions? All those in favor? 5-0, Mary. Thank you. Okay, community reports, 200th Anniversary Committee. Laura, any updates?
We're meeting tomorrow. I'm actually going on Friday to meet with Christina Marr, the art teacher up at the high school, to talk to her graphics class, who's going to do a logo contest for us.
We're meeting tomorrow?
Pardon?
Tomorrow or Thursday?
Friday. Oh, no, our meeting, I'm sorry, our meeting with the 200th anniversary is Thursday.
Okay.
Thank you, Matt, I lost track of what day of the week it was. And Friday, I will be going to meet with Christina Marr.
What's your last name?
M-A-H-E-R.
Okay, thank you. Final Plymouth County Hospital Reuse Committee.
Yep, we had a meeting on the 19th. We just kind of reviewed just some housekeeping for the upcoming town meeting, and then just talked about different activity that was going up there. We're hoping, I was meant to mention this to Mike today when I saw him, we're kind of hoping to kind of centralize a contact person for all the activity up there, just to kind of give approval and whatnot, because a lot of things are kind of happening. We have a lot of different committees up there. We have the 200th anniversary committee, then CPC, and, you know what I mean? So we just kind of want to try to collate everything and just
When are you
have,
meeting next?
sometime after town meeting.
Okay.
So,
All right.
but
Just let me know when I'll.
yeah, so we just want to kind of centralize everything, just so we're one smooth operating machine up there.
Good, excellent, thank you. Waquan School Reuse Committee.
Yep, we haven't met, but I do want to make sure, Mike, that we're going to have hard copy surveys
Yes.
out of how folks think we ought to reuse McQuon, or if we ought to reuse McQuon. And I also want to make sure that it's going to be out on the town website, cable, newspaper, and I will put it out on Facebook. But I just want to make sure that we're reaching people in a variety of ways so that we are getting all kinds of feedback from all kinds of folks.
Excellent, thank you.
The link that I received, it came out really funky when I tried to print it out. Does somebody have a printed version that we can hand out?
I'll see if when I print it, it comes out like in something more presentable.
Yeah.
I can't promise that,
Okay.
in which case, I don't, you know.
Well,
Yeah, because it's something that can be done online. The results are
Well,
online.
it's really intended to be done online,
Right.
but it
But if
should
we're gonna
also
be
able
handing
to-
it out,
Yeah,
it just
I'll
didn't
try
come
to
out
print
good.
it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, push comes to shove, I mean, we can view it if we have to, we'll just retype it.
wasn't
It's-
super
it's-
heavy, was it?
Exactly,
No,
it's
it
not,
wasn't.
it's not that
Okay.
long.
Okay, Highway Building Committee, we haven't met, so we'll have anything to report. So this is the end of our public meeting. We'll now be going into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiation with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining session or contract negotiation with non-union personnel if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares. Police Lieutenant, I'm looking for a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
made, seconded, roll call vote.
Aye.
Yes.
I'm in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
We're now in executive session. Thank you.